Welcome everyone to today's webcast. My name is Ben Chamberlain. I'm the Chief Product and Marketing Officer here at UMT360. I'm certainly excited today to talk about how to unlock the strategic PMO inside of Microsoft Project Server. So there is a moderator for today's event. Please use the Q&A wizard throughout the session. We will be pausing at the end to answer any questions, and we'll be utilizing the question and answer manager in GoToMeeting for that. So please take advantage of that facility. So let's take a look at today's agenda. We're first going to take a look at what's wrong with traditional PPM, and then we're going to look at two key steps we see traditional PMOs taking to become more strategic in their outlook: integrated financials for PPM, as well as getting a broader enterprise context across their organization. But today's focus is really to look at how UMT360 can seamlessly extend Project Server to provide integrated financial views. And we'll spend at least 50% of today's session in a live demonstration looking at how the solution can help build stronger business cases and streamline capital planning, automate status reporting and drive variance analysis, look at new approaches to continuously dynamically reallocate funds throughout the year to maximize ROI across your project and program portfolios, as well as establishing the all-elusive benefits realization framework. We'll end with how to get started, ROI, and that Q&A that I mentioned. So before we jump into what's wrong with traditional PPM, let's take a look again who UMT360, who we are. So at UMT360, we are leaders in enterprise portfolio management, and really our objective is to help organizations transform the way they manage enterprise investments, the way they invest in their product portfolios, project program, IT assets portfolios. And we're doing this by digitalizing investment planning controls across all portfolios, both business and technology portfolios, delivering the complete transparency and strategic insights needed to make better business decisions. At its core, enterprise portfolio management is a discipline that helps you understand the interrelationships and dependencies that exist between your enterprise portfolios to help you make better business decisions. The reason why I've included some of these accolades here, it really shows the breadth of our enterprise portfolio management offerings and solutions. Aligned with today's conversation is the Gartner Cool Vendor Award. Gartner in 2012 gave us the Cool Vendor Award in program and portfolio management. It's an award you only get once in a vendor's lifetime. And each year they focus on a different subject relevant to program portfolio management. The year we were awarded it was for how to better integrate financial management best practices with traditional, and when I say traditional, more execution-orientated PPM best practices. Gartner has also, for the last 3 years, seen us as a visionary player in their Magic Quadrant for integrated IT portfolio analysis. And for me, this is a classic example of what enterprise portfolio management is. Because at its core, vendors included in this report provide the ability to integrate project, application, IT service, and infrastructure portfolios, and better align IT to overarching business capabilities or business objectives. So the ability to integrate and get visibility across all IT activities, all IT spend, is key to that report. We're also the only enterprise portfolio management solution that is built on SharePoint with seamless integration with Microsoft Project Server, as we'll see today. And that's resulted in us being awarded the Microsoft Partner of the Year twice in the last 4 years, in addition to our consulting best practices and services too. In fact, at UMT we have a long history of partnering with Microsoft. In 2006, Microsoft acquired the original product from UMT, UMT Portfolio Manager, which later got rebranded and integrated into the project lineup as Office Project Portfolio Server. And then, in turn, the capabilities were built on top of into SharePoint and Project Server in Project Server 2010. So the demand management, portfolio optimization, capacity planning capabilities in Project Server 2010, Project Server 2013, and Project Online all came through that original acquisition of UMT technology, just showing the tenure we've had in terms of building solutions that seamlessly extend the Microsoft platform. So often I get asked, what is enterprise portfolio management, and why are companies turning to enterprise portfolio management? And really there are two primary reasons. The first is really a growth dilemma. Today I think scarcity is still a reality for many organizations. with demand for growth really exceeding our capacity to invest. And really, that's strangling our ability to invest in innovation or new strategic initiatives. And the reason for that is flat budgets and the continuous rise of operational costs, which is eroding our capacity to fund new projects. So the first reason organizations are embracing enterprise portfolio management is to get visibility across all spend, but zero in on the operational spend and look at techniques to rationalize that spend to free up more funds for innovation. Say in an integrated IT portfolio management solution, techniques like application portfolio management, infrastructure optimization, and other cost reduction strategies allowing you to free up funds to invest in more projects. The second reason is we need to continue to improve how we align execution with strategy. And traditional PPM, and again, when I say traditional PPM, more execution-orientated PPM is simply failing to deliver the anticipated results. Here you see on the left-hand side a number of stats from different industry analysts. They're very well known. Standish Group saying 18% of projects fail to get implemented, 43% of projects come in late or over budget. Gartner saying that 1 out of 3 projects completed projects experience significant cost overruns, and the good old PMI even saying that 33% of projects fail to deliver on their business intent. So they may not agree on the exact stats, but they do agree there's an overarching problem. At UMT, we've been in the PPM game even before it was referred to as PPM, and from our research, we see that these stats result in organizations failing to achieve around 46% of the planned business value from their project and program investments. Another way to look at that is that 46% of the investment in these portfolios is at risk. Now, it's very easy to just throw out these stats, but from our research, we found there are 3 primary reasons that is causing this business value erosion, something I like to refer to as the trifecta of business value erosion. And you can see them here: unreliable planning and innovation, poor project success rates, and poor budget utilization. I think it's important just to stop and break down why each one of these are contributing to that potential loss of around 50% of the planned business value from the portfolio. So let's start with unreliable planning and innovation. There's sort of 3 areas here: no objective framework for portfolio selection, poor cost estimating, and a need to move from a project-based to a product-based planning approach. So the first one, it still amazes me how many organizations still don't have an objective way to govern the annual planning process and select project portfolios that optimally align with their strategic intent or the strategic priorities. In fact, in a recent webcast to 200 execs, we asked this question: which best describes your annual planning with respect to process, business case framework, and metrics? And here you can see how the participants rated themselves. 13% said, look, it's kind of like the Wild West. No templates, metrics, and no ability to consolidate project requests in a central repository. Whereas 51% said, look, we do have a central repository to consolidate project requests, but often the data is disconnected and held in different tools. For example, financial data held in Excel. 23% had said a single system to capture and score all competing project requests, whereas only 14% were actually looking to capture, score, and objectively select project portfolios that best aligned with the organizational strategy. So moving away and developing a more robust process for annual planning is important, certainly not relying on the shiniest PowerPoint to get projects funded. Another area is inaccurate cost estimates and how that impacts portfolio value. For example, if the cost estimates for projects that are vying for inclusion in the portfolio are too high, this can hit you in the back pocket from a value attainment perspective. When you think about doing a top-down optimization, you're simply drawing the line too early from a budget point of view and leaving too many projects, good projects, behind. And without a mechanism like dynamic planning that we'll look at later to actually revisit those decisions, that value will remain lost. So estimating of cost estimates early in the process is another key area. An area that we could spend the whole hour on here is this movement from a project-based investment approach to more of a capability-driven investment approach. Today, most organizations rely on project-based investment approach, where they capture projects from across the organization, build business cases to whatever level of sophistication, use techniques to prioritize and optimize to whatever level of sophistication, and loosely align with strategy. But this is very bottom-up in orientation. I don't think we really stop to ask ourselves, what are we doing here? Are we simply selecting the best of a bad bunch of projects? Do we actually have an innovation problem? Do we have a suboptimal set of demand in the first place? So what we're seeing the market do at the moment, and certainly this is echoed by Gartner, is move to more of a product-based investment approach, what we refer to as a capability-driven investment approach, which is a true top-down approach, where you start with the organizational strategy itself and break down the core business capabilities or processes within the organization, and understand the importance of those processes relative to strategy, and do a gap analysis in terms of their internal and external performance. At this level, it gives us the ability to understand what changes we need to make to the core processes of our organization to drive and better align and meet the strategic objectives. And this results in an allocation of funds by capability and initiation of multi-year programs to close the performance gap on those capabilities. Ultimately results in a stronger set of demand. When applied in an IT context, the ability to use business capabilities as a bridge between IT and the business is also important. So being able to understand which application IT assets are driving and supporting each capability, allowing IT to make changes to the supporting IT landscape to support the strategy of the business. But again, the difference between the two approaches is you end up with the capability-driven approach with a stronger set of IT demand or project demand. So that's unreliable planning and innovation. Next, poor project success rates. The stat before, 18% of projects fail to get implemented. If you fail to implement a project, you're not going to get the value from it. If you have cost overruns, which is just a fact of life, at the portfolio level, budget is finite. So you have to make changes. You aren't going to de-scope projects. You're not going to do projects that were in the plan. And that, in turn, is going to hit you from a realization of value perspective. The area that was probably the most surprising to me is poor budget utilization, where we did the research. We found that many organizations today were actually failing to spend all the allocated budget to them within a calendar or fiscal period. There could be many reasons for this, things like resource shortfalls, simply not allowing yourself to start projects that you planned for the year. Unplanned carryovers was another great example, where projects slip from one year into the next year. Don't spend all the budget in the initial year, and even worse, take budget away from the next year, and you don't realize the value until the next year. But one of the overarching contributing factors to budget utilization was poor forecasting capabilities and skills from project managers. All too often, money being held hostage at the project level and not being freed up when it's not needed to be reinvested. And when we look at the dynamic planning approach a little later in the demonstration, you'll see how we can continuously look to reallocate funds and decide when to invest more in existing projects, when to free up funds from projects that don't need it, and take a portfolio approach to reallocate funds, optimize spend, and maximize ROI across the portfolio. So those are the three areas. What I want to do is just pause here for the first poll and ask a simple question. Which of the factors listed in the trifecta of business value erosion impacts you the most? So we'll launch the polls. And obviously the answers here are unreliable planning and innovation, poor project success rates, poor portfolio management or budget utilization, or all of the above. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. So we'll pause for 15 seconds or so. So options, unreliable planning and innovation, poor project success rates, poor budget utilization or portfolio management, or all of the above. So let's close the polls. So the answers you see here is unreliable planning innovation with 25%, which makes a lot of sense. Poor project success rates with 6%. Poor portfolio management or budget utilization with 19%. And 51% saying, look, it's a bit of everything, which is normally the response. I would say normally I get that 75% of the time than 51% of the time, but maybe around the unreliable planning and innovation, many organizations still need to improve what they're doing there with the basic kind of project-based planning that I referred to earlier. But again, the common response is normally it's kind of death by 1,000 cuts, all of the above. So let's go back to the main slides and move on. So what we found is one of the key problems with more traditional execution-oriented PMOs is for too long have been focused more on the kind of execution, project delivery activities like schedule management, resource management, time tracking, which I'm not downplaying the importance of. It's hugely important. We need to reorientate to the fact that at their core, projects are business investments. They're initiatives to deliver revenue or grow revenue, to reduce costs, to align with compliance mandates. So you need to think of them more through a strategic mindset. And when you do that, you've got to take the responsibility to continuously optimize spend and maximize value across the portfolio. So the PMO is has a daunting role, has to be the master of execution, wearing the PMI hat, as well as almost become the CFO of the project portfolio to ensure they're maximizing value across the portfolio. So we see two key steps in becoming a strategic PMO, and this assumes that there's already a level of expertise around project delivery and execution. The first is to get an integrated financial view, integrate investment planning and controls across the PPM lifecycle, which will be our primary focus today. The second is actually then to realize that projects don't exist in a vacuum. They're created to make change to an IT asset, a product, a business capability, or process. So you've got to start to get that enterprise context or enterprise perspective. And by understanding what the projects are impacting across the wider enterprise portfolios, a PMO starts to get greater visibility across all spend, visibility across all portfolio activities versus just being focused on the project and program portfolio from a spend and activity point of view. But as I said, we're going to focus more today on the first step, which is integrated financials. So what does it look like to integrate investment planning and controls across the traditional PPM lifecycle? And here you see it here. I've broken down the traditional lifecycle in core phases of strategize through create, select, plan, manage, and measure. So when I think about how UMT360 here is seamlessly extending Project Online or Microsoft Project Server, in the strategy phase, we provide the ability to establish a portfolio hierarchy. It could be by department, it could be by portfolio, by program, and more importantly, record true top-down budgets at different levels within that hierarchy. And then the ability to unify budgets, roll up budgets from the underlying projects from the bottom-up perspective. Of course, regardless if you're relying on the project-based investment approach or that top-down capability-driven investment approach, building stronger business cases is key to evaluate those requests. And we want all information pertaining to the project to be housed within that planning and execution system. So being able to have integrated cost-benefit estimates, different metrics to evaluate the projects alongside all the other information, resource information, schedule information is obviously key. That is going to feed the out-of-the-box portfolio optimization capabilities that are still world-class in Project Server and Project Online today. With UMT360 as well, you're going to streamline organizational budgeting, who's funding which project to what extent, as well as lock budgets on approval. Once we move into the execution phase, we often hear from PMOs that automating recurring status reporting, let's say on a monthly cadence, is a key challenge. So being able to automate that process of status reporting, spend less time manually reconciling data and building reports is key. And we do that by driving financial performance, integrating and capturing actuals from different ERP systems, driving the variance analysis, forecast versus budget, and administering change requests to request more funds if needed, or by the same self-token, give money back if it needs to be reinvested. And that fuels this dynamic planning reallocation methodology, which looks to overcome some of the frailties of a traditional annual planning approach and give you the ability throughout the year to rebalance the portfolio. So when money is released, for example, how is it going to be reinvested? Am I going to reinvest it more in existing projects that require those funds? Or am I actually going to bring new projects in from the pipeline to do two things, continuously optimize the spend and maximize the overall value from the portfolio? Last but not least is obviously if we're going to invest time to build a business case with benefit estimates, let's not use that business case just to get the project funded. Let's use it at the end of the project to establish a benefits realization framework and drive greater accountability in terms of our estimating capabilities. So that's the areas we're going to look at today. Some of the key problems organizations have with integrating investment planning and controls is a selection of inadequate tools. All too often, Excel is relied on to manage project financials. That's okay, but it is disconnected. It's different to govern. Of course, there's many stories of how error-prone it can be. ERP systems are often relied on too. They're obviously going to remain the system of record from a financial perspective, but they don't often provide the PPM teams with the complete financial view of their project and program portfolios that they need. So let's make sure that we can integrate the data from the ERP systems to provide those views. Often the leading PPM tools, including Microsoft Project Server, they didn't grow up with a level of financial sophistication. So they lack the sophistication to fully manage project and portfolio financials. So that's where UMT360 is really coming in here in this instance, is being able to bridge the gap between an ERP system and Microsoft Project Server to provide those integrated financial views. So on to our next poll. Which tools do you rely on today to manage project and portfolio financials? And the answer here, we rely too much on Excel. We utilize the out-of-the-box capabilities of Project Server. And when I say out-of-the-box capabilities of Project Server, utilizing custom fields, even obviously the resource assignment to get the costs from a schedule or a resource plan perspective. We rely on our ERP system for financials. We have built a custom solution, or none of the above. So we'll pause for another 15 seconds or so, and we'll go from there. So we rely too much on Excel. We utilize out-of-the-box capabilities of Project Server, custom fields, resource assignment costs. We rely on our ERP system solely. We build a custom solution, or none of the above. All right, so let's close the poll. All right, so let's take a look at this. I don't think this is a real surprise that 46% of the response is that we rely too much on Excel. We often joke here that as it pertains to our solution for financial management for PPM, I think Excel is probably our biggest competitor. It's just a fact of life. I am a little surprised by how many are actually just leveraging the out-of-the-box capabilities of Project Server in terms of resource assignments and custom fields. ERP systems at 17%, custom solutions at 13%, and 70% are not looking at financials at this stage. So again, we often see obviously a heavy reliance on Excel. So let's return back to the slides. So we hit the demo time, and again, as I said, we're going to focus solely on the first step in building a strategic PMO, which is to get that integrated financial view. And time permitting, I'll try and show you some demo snippets on these 4 areas. How the solution helps to build a more robust business case within Project Server and streamline capital planning. How to automate status reporting and variance analysis. We'll take a look at this really from a financial orientation. Then use that information to more effectively dynamically reallocate funds throughout the year. And if there's time, we'll take a quick look at how to establish a project-level benefits realization framework. So let me bring up the solution. So in interest of transparency here, we have a UMT360 demonstration environment here that's built out on top of Project Server 2013. So we're looking at Project Server 2013 today. That being said, we do also integrate with Project Server 2010. So what I'm going to do is try and follow this through in kind of the sequence of the project's life. We'll start with upfront capital planning and business case, move into execution and dynamic planning, and then benefits realization. So with UMT360, a lot of pre-packaged configuration around best practices of integrating financials with Project Server. Now, that includes a whole host of reports and dashboards of varying levels, portfolio, program, project level, depending on the hierarchical structure that you design. So let's start, at least at the portfolio level, with an investment planning dashboard. And we'll work our way down to the project record and look at the business case. At this level, there's 2 reasons or 2 questions people ask when looking at this, when using this dashboard. They want to understand what's the remaining budget, and then potentially which projects should they invest. What this highlights is our ability here to record true top-down organizational budgets. We can record budgets at any level in the organizational hierarchy or any level within the portfolio hierarchy. So we have $12 million organizational budget here. We have $6 million of committed, meaning the projects are in flight, which leaves the remaining balance of around $6 million worth of funds available. We have $11 million worth of projects in the pipeline, haven't been funded yet. And what this is telling me here, and we'll refer to strategic yield throughout today's presentation, is that if I was to commit the $6 million without even thinking about it, I could get 88% of the yield, strategic yield, from this portfolio. You can also see here where the money's hanging out by department, by type of project, by governance phase, investment type, what's new for the year, planned carryover, the worst case scenario, unplanned carryover. But let's look to answer the next question. Which projects potentially should I invest in with the available budget? So this is not in replacement to the what-if analysis capabilities or portfolio optimization capabilities in Project Server. It's simply doing a stack rank view of projects from multiple prioritization schemas that are designed within the business case. And the default view is strategic yield. So let's just pause and take a look at what strategic yield is for a second. Strategic yield is the strategic value of the project, how it contributes to the success of the business strategy or impacts the business strategy, divided by its cost. It is a dynamic metric. I refer to it as a kind of an investment barometer for the project through its life. The way to look at it here is the bang for the buck. So all we're doing here is stack ranking the projects or prioritizing the projects by strategic yield. And where the shading changes here shows me where I run out of funds. So all projects included above the line here equate to 88% of the overall value or yield from the portfolio. But of course, there's nothing stopping me changing the prioritization schema, looking at it from an ROI perspective, an NPV perspective, and seeing where the line draws. We can also see the amount of overall yield, strategic yield, this is delivering to the portfolio, 109.2, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. And what are the selected benefits? So from the project selected here, I can, because we have benefit estimating and benefits management capabilities, very easy to see now what that's going to look like. From what are these projects going to deliver from a benefit structure point of view, however you design your benefit structures, from a time point of view, if you want to go deep into what that looks like in 2015, all that information is there for you. And here are all the projects that have been selected in that analysis. Anyway, the point is just very quickly to see where the line draws from multiple perspectives. When we look at this, we don't really want to look too much at projects at the top of the list. Maybe we start to look at projects above or below the line. So let's drill down on Innovation Management Framework. And you're going to drill down to a business case report, which is obviously configurable, but it's taken more of a financial orientation. This is being generated dynamically. Here we see the total cost benefit for the project, standardized financial metrics, strategic value coming from, which is the impact on business strategy, an absolute score for that, yield, which is value divided by cost, that dynamic metric, risk coming from a UMT360 survey engine, another score, as well as an overall priority score. But more importantly, and we'll look at this at the project record level, the ability to also to see who's funding this project and in turn who's accruing the benefits from this project, as well as views you're going to expect to see like cumulative cost and benefits, payback periods, etc. So get good insight into the financial contribution of this project, at least from this view. But let's work our way down now to the record in Project Server. So we're looking now at the record in Project Server. We're looking at the business case infrastructure. So you can see the workflow that's been designed in this image here, and this UMT360 workflow visualization is graphically showing us where we are. We're in the define stage where we expect to build a high-level business case before we move into the annual planning select stage. If selected, the detailed planning, a final go, no-go, before moving into execution, closeout, evaluation, where you can look at things like benefits realization. Now, the first thing to know is how seamlessly integrated UMT360 is from a data and from a UI perspective. So obviously, for those of you familiar with Project Server, you're going to recognize things like project details and schedule. All the other views here are coming from UMT360, but the end user feels like it's Project Server, and that is by design. There's nothing that we really don't extend from a business case perspective. We like to say we put the business case on Project Server on steroids. So even though I look at things like project details, which is obviously a well-used out-of-the-box capabilities in Project Server, one of the feedback we got from our customers was that these need to be more dynamic. So in our intelligent form solution, which includes this capability I'm going to show you, conditional logic and validation rules, as well as our survey infrastructure, It's very easy to make these forms more dynamic. So if I come in here, for example, and select finance, I'm forced to add a funding source. If the worst case scenario happens and we move from a new investment for the year to an unplanned carryover, I'm forced to add a justification. You can make these forms more dynamic, and this is a simple example of that, to in turn make the experience of demand management or business case better. So with that, let's move on to the integrated cost and benefit analysis, which is the primary reason for the discussion today. The ability to be able to move away from Excel and consolidate financial information across the life cycle by standardizing cost and benefit structures is key. And cost and benefit are two that come out of the box, but you can define additional financial structures. Here we also have the ability to control the level of information that is captured. Here we're requesting, based on the workflow stage, information to be captured by quarter and at level 2 within the financial structure. But I can drill down and capture more information as you see within the structure that's been defined here. So you control the level of detail. You can start at a much higher level, but we see the concept of financial amplification as you move through the project's life. More and more and more financial information is captured as you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the workflow. Very easy to come in here and capture information. I can have it imported. I can manually enter it. But if you look at these triangle symbols here, represent that these nodes are read-only and being pulled in from project server. So the resource assignment costs are being dynamically aggregated here, actually from the resource plan. But you get to choose whether it comes from the resource plan or the schedule, and that will be kept in sync on the publish event. So the ability to break down the total cost of the project and integrate with the resource plan and schedule is obviously key. Multi-currency tends to be a big deal for many customers. So the ability to manage the project in multi-currencies is handled here. The ability also to break down the cost of the project by funding source. Different ways to do this. We have allocation centers that allow you to come in here and on a percentage basis say who's down to fund this project: finance, operations, IT. That's on a percentage basis. Another way to do it would be to add the allocation centers on a line item by line item basis in the grid and break it down by hand. So we've centralized our cost estimates in a governable and reportable form. Next, we can look at capturing benefit estimates. So here again, we standardize the benefit structure here. I can see I'm capturing information by year at level 2, but I can drill down and capture more information. Again, define as many structures as you like. So let's look at some of the scoring mechanisms that are available here. So with UMT360, you get the ability to standardize surveys to help score projects. For example, if I look at this risk assessment here, this is using the survey engine. A simple risk survey it has the project secured funding, any new technologies involved, and so forth. And that's ultimately going to derive a risk score automatically that's going to use to evaluate. This is actually a project to bring on a new IT asset, so we're actually doing an enterprise architectural assessment, leveraging the same survey infrastructure to derive a score that's going to help us evaluate the projects here. We're also leveraging the survey infrastructure to do an impact assessment against business drivers. Of course, many of you will know there is an out-of-the-box form in Project Server that does the same. The only reason we're using this form here is to automatically generate this score that we use in that yield calculation. So again, you can use the survey infrastructure to score projects, programs, or other portfolios from multiple perspectives. Now, the thing I wanted to spend some time on a little bit is associations. Here I can actually link what this project is going to impact, and this is part of that enterprise context, the second step of becoming a strategic PMO. In this simple example, I can actually see this project is supporting a program and is also linked to an IT asset in our application catalog. Let's stay with program management. So I'm actually going to roll up to the program level. So you get full program management capabilities in UMT360. Here you can see we have a program, Global Innovation Program. It's a living and breathing entity in its own right. It's being managed completely independently, has its own workflow, and it has its own best practice data and forms. More importantly, I have the ability to record true top-down budgets at the program level, budgets completely decoupled from the underlying bottom-up budgets coming from the supporting projects. So I can look at multi-year budgets pertaining to the program, if I look by year. You'll see that across this 4-year period. And the same for benefits. And I can even have scoring mechanisms, depending on how I design it at the program level. So if we take a look at the associations of this program, you can see it's actually supporting this business capability. But more importantly, here are all the projects that are associated to this program. So we're not just using this relationship to physically map the project to the program. We're also using it to dynamically aggregate financial information. So when I look at the cost views here and the benefit views here, this is just aggregating financial information, cost and benefit from the underlying projects and displaying it at this level in a read-only mode. So I can now start to compare and contrast both top-down and bottom-up financials at the program level. Here, for example, that report tells you exactly that. This is a report that is comparing that top-down and bottom-up financials. Top-down program budget, budget coming from the projects, the forecast variance, and you can see where projects are in their life cycle and get down to them at any stage. So let's return back to the project level. So I'll turn back to innovation management. I'm not going to show this next capability, but it's an important one to understand. So hopefully you've seen what constitutes a world-class business case. Obviously you've got the project site for document management and everything else that you need that for in Project Server. Another key area or feature we see being used is snapshotting. You can snapshot and keep an auditable record of project financials, metrics, and other metadata pertaining to the project at any point. For example, the way we've configured this demonstration environment is I run a snapshot here at the select gate at the first approval point, and run a snapshot again at the second approval point. Any project that goes through this will get a snapshot, and we can keep an auditable record in terms of the cost estimates and other metrics around the project. So we can see how they change between the funding gates. We can also start to circle back once we've completed the project. We'll have forecast costs of the projects to start to derive estimating accuracy at different levels or different stages within our planning process. It's rich information that's going to help us improve our planning processes over time. So what I'm going to do, because I'm pressed on time, is now focus more on the execute stage. So I'm going to pick up a cost tracking report. Again, I'm going to start at the portfolio level. I'm going to keep this focus more on financials, obviously. So this view is basically summarizing only in-flight projects, or what we call committed projects. So again, it's at the portfolio level, broken down by department, and taking a look at the budget from the committed projects versus the forecast to drive variance. Because we also can record organizational top-down budgets, I can also look at the variance from that point of view. Obviously, what you're going to expect to see here is things like cumulative budget actual cost views. And in this case, this chart is showing me actually I have a budget utilization issue, right? My forecast is less than my plan, meaning that I'm forecasting an underspent. That was that third issue that I mentioned in the Trifecta slide. So what can we do about that? What we're looking to do, and I'll show you this in a second at the project level, is automate status reporting and derive variance analysis, or drive the variance analysis. And we tend to try to look to group projects in three camps. The first are projects that are over budget, forecast greater than plan. And here you see them, the top 10 at least across the organization, the top one having around 30% overrun. And of course we're going to make decisions here. Are we going to give them more money? Are we going to de-scope them? Are we going to cancel them? But it's too early to make those decisions. But we watch the projects that are overspending, obviously. We also want to look at projects that are forecasting underspend. Why? Because we want money to be released. We want to release money early from a portfolio perspective so it can be reinvested and we can maintain or garner the value throughout within the planning year. So these projects that are forecasting an underspend, and we want to release that money and reinvest it. This next group of projects I lovingly refer to as the wolf in sheep's clothing. These are the ones that to date are under budget, but the PM is forecasting they're going to spend all the money, right? And the reality is they never do, or they sometimes do, but they don't often. And in Q4, it results in these Q4 budget utilization nightmares where you don't spend the money and there's no time to react. So we watch these projects closely because there may be a point where we want to take money back from them. So are we going to give more money to the top projects? We're going to have money freely released from the middle grouping here, and we may take money back from these at a certain point in time. This is the premise or the foundation of dynamic planning. These are the decisions that we're going to look to make, but I'll come back to that in a second. But let's drill down and take a look at how we're automating the status reporting for this project. So this is the project that was forecasting overrun, health assessment reporting tool. Here you're seeing an integrated dashboard that is showcasing all the performance metrics. So here we're leveraging strategic yield. This is that business metric that I refer to as the investment barometer for a project. It really acts as that metric the CFO of the project portfolio needs. The cost of this project went up 30+%. The value stayed the same. The yield instantly degraded, simply saying there's a problem from an investment viability perspective. Are you willing to invest more money in this versus investing money in other projects? It's simply alerting to the fact that there's a problem from an investment point of view. Of course, we'll look at cost. Of course, we're going to look at schedule, resource variance, and other aspects you need to look at. Now, I'm not going to go into these other views looking at the phase evolution of the business case, the automated status reports. I'm just going to drill down to talk about how we automate that financial tracking process. So we're now back down at the project level. We're seeing the project is now in execution. More views are available here. So I now have my budget's been locked. When I went from plan gate to execution, I locked my budget. I copy my budget to my forecast. I start to track costs and reforecast costs. I'm not going to show this, but in the background, as a PMO, we provide the tools to open up a status reporting period for the year. I'll just reopen this because it should be open. And so you can publish status reports across all in-flight projects. So you get notified, look, there's a new status report to be complete. We're in July 2014 from a status reporting purpose, and you now can see all the previous reports that have been archived. So I can open the status report, notify the PMs that there's a status report to be complete. There's a data exchange module that allows you to integrate with ERP systems to pull in actual costs dynamically. I'm not showing that here, but you can sync the actual costs, so they'll already be shown here as the committed costs before they add their accruals. 3 ways to enter actual costs: by hand, which I don't recommend, through the ERP integration module, which I do highly recommend, or even through the schedule itself. So as a PM, I'm going to come in here, capture and update my actuals, come in, update the remaining costs, the forecast costs for the project, which is obviously going to drive the variance analysis. So all past periods are locked. I can only update the forecast for the remaining periods. And I can even come in and update the project status, text descriptions around the status, which was feeding that dashboard I showed you earlier. But ultimately, when I've completed that report, I can simply submit that report. Submitting that report, depending on the workflow that's being configured, will do 2 things. Either it's going to route that report for line manager approval, or it's simply going to lock me out and notify the PMO that I'm complete. And I now can't change the data. The data is locked, and I can't change it, and those reports I showed you earlier are going to start to dynamically build. If the PMO wants to reopen the report, they can. When they open the next reporting period, in this case for August 2014, July will become archived, and then we start to build leverage that archive from a trending analysis perspective. Now, this project was trending over budget, so the ability to be able to administer change requests is certainly key. I'm not going to go into this, but coming in here, being able to raise and route a change request for approval is key. Well, there's no time to go into that today. I want to roll back to the portfolio level and take a look at what that would look like. So I'd raise a change request here, whether that was to request more money or if this project was running under budget, to give back money. So let's roll back up to the portfolio level. So I'm just going to pull up the change request analysis view. This is summarizing all the change requests across the organization. Here we can see we have our current committed budget is $17 million. We're aggregating that strategic yield to the portfolio level. We can see the additional money requested is $300,000, which is actually reducing our yield from the portfolio. We're spending more money to get the same value. It's reducing that yield. Now, that $300,000 relates to money that's been given back, the releases, as well as additional funds that are being requested. So here are the releases, money being given back by different projects that don't need it, and here are the projects that require more money. So we've got a decision to make. We don't question the releases. Releases are just taken back, and we then make a decision how to invest. But it's not a matter of just giving it to the existing projects. Should we start to bring in new projects from the pipeline to do 2 things? Not only optimize the budget utilization, but maximize the ROI. So if I look at this dynamic planning view here, what this is doing again is stack ranking the existing projects that require more funds with net new projects coming in from the pipeline versus committed. And what this is telling me is my current budget utilization is 93%. The current strategic yield is 1,500. The available funds with all the releases and the underspend from budget utilization is 3.2 million. And the total additional request for funds is 790,000. And if I take this recommendation, rather than my strategic yield going down, it's going to go up. So what's happening here? We're drawing a line, and the tool is recommending, based on the yield of the projects, when to invest more in existing, committed, versus when to bring in new pipeline. So again, making that decision to do two things: optimize spend and maximize value. So what does that look like from monthly process? When I look at dynamic reallocation, it is really having an eye on two things. As I said, looking to maximize the value or the yield here with a continuous focus on how am I doing from a budget utilization perspective. And whether you're doing this on a quarterly basis, whether you're doing this on a monthly basis, as shown here, this is what it looks like. You know the budget, what the budget was as you started the period. You can then see how much money was released, how many new projects were brought in, and how much funds were redirected to existing projects. And then you can see the surplus at the end of the period, and you keep an eye on the budget utilization as well as the strategic yield, of course, as well as looking at the overall balance in terms of the alignment of spend with the strategy of your business or the business drivers that you see here. So other organizational intelligence that you'll be able to derive is things like things like better forecasting spend. This is a great view, an example of how you can benefit year 2, year 3 from the information that's being captured. The top line here simply represents spend pattern for this year, and you always see a spike in Q3, Q4 from a forecast perspective. But the bottom line here represents the historic spend pattern, showing there isn't that spike. So you can do a better job of communicating to departments in terms of, look, I don't think you can spend that much. You never have. Historically, you've always been fairly flat, right? And start to do a better job of predicting where the actual spend will result at the end of the year. Now, very quickly, just to touch on benefits realization. I'll try and do this very quickly, just to complete the scenario. So if I go back to the 360 view here, let's take a look at the benefits tracking. Again, dashboard summarizing for the current year what's the expected benefits by the different revenue benefit categories that have been designed by department, simply looking at the budget and the actual benefits achieved for the year. Here we can see that we're not achieving the forecast benefits. The actuals are less than the plan. And here are some of the projects that are contributing to that loss. So being able to, again, to drill down into the project, see or learn more about the benefits that this project is realizing or not realizing. Here we can see from all categories or even from a different expense category perspective where the benefit's not being realized. And then, of course, we can drill down to the project level again, the project in project server, in the evaluation phase, and you can see now I have benefits tracking and benefits forecasting, if needed, available to me. So that ends the demonstration. I'm going to go back to the slides. So how to get started? Obviously it's an obvious statement, but a phased approach yields the best results. And this is commonly how we see organizations looking to better integrate financial management best practices or investment planning controls across the digital PPM lifecycle. In the first phase, it really is about establishing the investment planning controls. Let's standardize those financial structures in the planning stages, in the tracking phases, as needed. Let's move away from Excel and consolidate that information within our planning and execution system. Figure out what financial information is needed at each stage in the governance process. So it's all more governable and more reportable. In sort of phase 1.5 into phase 2 here, let's look to drive data integrity. Let's now look to integrate with our line of business systems, ERP systems, for example, SAP, Oracle Financials, JD Edwards, whichever one you're using. So we can ensure that actual costs are being pulled in at the right time to help us drive those variance views as well as the forecast information. And now let's look to automate reporting. let's look to automate some of those reports that I showed you, the variance analysis, the dashboarding reports, so the PMO can spend more time focused on analyzing and supporting decisions that may fall part of that dynamic reallocation process versus manually reconciling information in Excel or various other systems and building reports. Now, in terms of when to move to dynamic reallocation or benefits realization, there's no one-size-fits-all here. You can rotate these, but having automated and integrated the data set, being able to move to that dynamic reallocation approach that I discussed becomes more of a reality. But the thing about dynamic reallocation is it's only as strong as your forecasting capabilities. So there is a cultural change to make with the project managers in terms of expecting them to be able to freely request more money, by the same self-token actually start to freely give back money so it can be reinvested. So without that effort to actually change that mindset in terms of forecasting behavior, dynamic reallocation is kind of an exercise in futility. Now, and of course the benefits realization framework, being able to go beyond this business case and start to track actual results, and ideally look to encourage that accountability, look for stronger estimates, both cost and benefit estimates from the get-go. So taking a phased approach in these three phases is kind of the way we see this being approached. Now, what we see is that if you do that, it's possible to gain up to 20% more ROI from your projects and program portfolios. Remember, I went back at the start of the presentation, I talked about 46% of the investment being at risk. You adopt these techniques over time, you're going to look to get at least 20% more ROI from those project portfolios. So what does that look like? And here's just a kind of simple sort of ROI assessment here. We assumed here an overall project budget of around $125 million, discretionary spend of $125 million. So if we take that 46% stat that I gave earlier, 46% of the investment is at risk. Now, you may be on a sliding scale. I'm going to guess you're above 25%. You're somewhere between 25% and 50% of that investment is at risk, based on the Trifecta slide that I showed you at the start. And now our analysis shows that you can achieve up to, on average, 20% better ROI per year from that 46% that's at risk. So if you look at the views here, the bottom chart represents that 46%. So over 3 years, there was $172 million at risk. And if you do 20% better across the money that's at risk, you're actually you're saving $11.5 million a year, a saving of $34.5 million over the 3-year period. So that's what's summarized here. So what I've tried to do here is say, look, you may buy into everything I've just said. So if you believe everything I just said, you're going to get 100% of the realized value. So total savings of $34 million, yearly of 11.5, average yearly savings on this portfolio of 9.2%. But more importantly, understanding the cost of postponing such a decision is about $1 million a month. Now, if you only buy into 50% of what I said in terms of that 46%, then there's the results. And I can prove to you concretely that you're definitely investment at risk is definitely over 25%. But if you think that, okay, this guy's smoking something, I think at least going to get 10%, then there are the results too. It's still very, very compelling from an ROI perspective. In fact, I hid the ROI numbers here because they often look too big. So we're going to pause in a second for Q&A, but a quick action plan. What would I encourage you to do next? First, really like it if we're going to post a survey at the end of the session. In fact, Paul's doing that now in the chat window or the IM window. And this is a survey to if you take time, I think 6 or so questions to rate how strategic your PMO is. It takes more of a focus on what we looked at today, integrated financials, looking at how good your business case is, your portfolio selection, your status reporting, dynamic relocation, and benefits realization. But it also has a question around enterprise context. Now, do you know which assets, processes, products that these projects are impacting. As a PMO, do you have wider visibility? And by completing that survey, you'll get a score in terms of today how strategic your PMO is. Over the next 7 days, I would encourage you to really assessing how well integrated your financial management capabilities are today with Microsoft Project Server. And what I hope you saw today was how seamlessly integrated UMT360 is from a UI perspective and from a data perspective, and that makes a big difference. We're not asking you here to rip and replace Project Server. What we're doing is have packaged templates that provide you with the integrated financials in your chosen planning and execution system, and it's very easy to enable. And over the next 30 days, feel free to reach out to us at UMT360 and look at maybe scheduling an envisioning workshop where we'll talk about how to become a more strategic PMO. We'll go deeper into enterprise context and managing other portfolios, in addition to obviously going deeper on how to get financial visibility across your project and program portfolios and become, as I like to say, the CFO of the project portfolio. So with that in mind, please feel free to take the survey. We will pause for Q&A now. I do have some questions being handed to me. I will, if you start to drop off, as we're almost on the hour, I do appreciate your time. I hope you found the session valuable. Please look out for the next webcast in the series. We run these type of webcasts